perspective, but bars and restaurants, it was the same. DirecTV licensed the content through Everpass, an entity set up by the NFL and led private equity. This season, DirecTV won't be involved. Everpass's decision. Everpass wants to stream the games. That's coming up about 83 days. For a lot of bars and restaurants, that's a complicated thing. They can't just run to the local store, order a Fire Stick off of Amazon and say, hey, we're streaming. Turns out it's much more involved than that. So I have an interesting panel here today. I'll start with Mike Whittrock, who's the COO of DirecTV. He's been involved with building the B2B distribution market from the ground floor for 2 decades. How you doing, Mike?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for having us.
I won't dominate this discussion. I'm just going to quickly introduce you guys.
Now, that we're already.
Oh, yeah. So
Thanks. Hey, real quick, just thanks for doing this. Thanks for Stream Show for putting it on. There'll be more conversations we should be having about B2B stream, what we can collectively do to help and invest in this problem we're going to talk about today.
yeah, thanks to the good folks at Questex for putting together, and I appreciate it too. Thankful to be a part of it. And to your left, Jim Hollers, who's the founder and managing director of Citizens Grill. Do I have that right, Jim?
And Tailgaters Pub and Grill, even more important right now.
How many outlets do you have?
I have 8 bars and restaurants, 3 different brands.
And you're kind of a celebrity this week. I don't know if you saw Jim testify for the Congress last week. The issue of live sports streaming came up, and we took time out of things like the Iraq War, Iran War, and talked about that. So that was kind of interesting. So I guess this is kind of a step down, actually. So
So I did a Fox Business too right after that. So
another celebrity in the making, Joe Hand, has been doing toward the far left here, Joe Hand Jr., whose father started Joe Hand Promotions 5 decades ago. I just heard the story. It's a great story. Former Philadelphia city cop who made a very risky wager on Smoking Joe Frazier to take down Muhammad Ali, won the bet, and set up a company that specialized in bringing live events to local establishments. So Joe here has carried on the baton, and if you saw the UFC event on the South Lawn of the White House this week, and you were at a bar or restaurant locally, that was Joe's work. So how are you, Joe?
good, Dan. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Sure. Like I said, I'm invited too. So again, thrilled to be here. So I'll get right into it. Let you guys take over the discussion. I'll start with Jim. When people walk into Citizens or tailgaters, as the case may be, they're thinking, well, if this thing isn't in, 4K, if they just have it in 1080p, I'm going to walk right out and eat my mango habanero someplace else. I'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings. They're really, they don't care, do they? They just want to watch the game.
Absolutely. They just want their game on. They want to hang out with their friends. And they, in fact, walking into my establishments, just expect it to be on and to work flawlessly. And that's, of course, the real problem when we change to the world of streaming. Because if you basically have any kind of glitches, delays, they don't blame the NFL. They won't blame Everpass streaming. They'll blame the restaurant. And you'll see they'll go to the bar down the street because they didn't mess up the game last week. And it's a critical infrastructure for us all. And it just needs to work. And, the bars and restaurants are the gathering place for fans to come together. And it's a great communal experience. And it's been working for 30 years, and we just want it to keep working.
So do your patrons know who Everpass even is?
They have no idea.
I think so. So I'll direct this one to you, Mike. You've been involved with this for a while. I mean, you were setting up AV in bars and restaurants before you went to DirecTV several decades ago, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's a little different streaming than what most bars and restaurants have set up right now. maybe you could talk about the landscape of how distribution and technology works at the technical establishment.
Yeah, and I think the very heart of this is why I really applaud the Stream Show for taking this on. I think I want to have more conversations in the future. I think the streaming industry inherently has done really well. Our data analysis shows that live events like sports, like news, like shows, in 2015 was in the sort of single digit percentage coming from stream. Last year it was 47%. It actually includes the traditional mechanisms like cable, satellite. But B2B, like we're talking about here, bars, restaurants, airlines, hotels, they're still in the single digits. So if it took 10 years for single family households to get up to close to 50% and to overtake the previous distribution method, with these kind of use cases, I think it could take longer. The focus and investment hasn't been on that necessarily. And a lot of people don't understand it, but it is starkly different. First of all, it's multi-screen. Whether we're talking about 80 screens at a bar or whether we're talking about thousands at a hotel or a casino, you got to have a multicast and you got a multi-screen. And when you start to focus on these use cases, whether it's an airline or a hotel or a bar, you start to learn that there's kind of these 4 things that they demand that you have to have. That's a price to get in the door because of what you said, Jim, the patrons that you're trying to serve. And one of those is reliability. It can't go down in the fourth quarter. Like it could be massive financial impact for several weeks for one of these businesses. It's got to be massively reliable, high 4 nines. And then it also has to have the time synchronization. It has to be fixed because a lot of these use cases are showing the same game at the same time. We've got stories and we've heard cases of one bar next to each other in an outdoor venue, and they're all clapping because the touchdown was made and the other bar doesn't even know it yet. But the time sync has to be there, and you can't have one thing happen on one side of your bar while the other thing's happening. And so time sync's important. Broadband bandwidth. If I put 8 boxes in your bar tomorrow, and that takes 250 megabits of throughput, I don't know if you have 250, but that's all. If you do, it probably has to run your customer Wi-Fi, your point of sale system, et cetera. So if you're going to deploy in streaming, we've got to lower the bandwidth requirements. And the last thing I'd say, you got to solve for delay. Sports betting is happening. The apps and this digital evolution of sports gambling is occurring, and people love it. And they love to go to their local bar and bet on their games or those events. But they can't do it if you have a massive time delay. Streaming across the board, it varies, and people are pushing the envelope on that before you get into packet loss. But it's not 2 or 3 seconds like the traditional distribution. So those are the 4 things you got to care for if you're going to play in the space. And that's what streaming's not quite ready for, but it will get there at some point.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was watching England play Croatia yesterday in Embers down the hall from us, and England at the 85-minute mark scored what appeared to be an insurance goal to go 4-2 and seal the game. And about 5 to 10 seconds later, at Mountain Pass, you hear the fans on it. So that's kind of an illustration at a streaming conference of actually what was pretty good latency difference probably in the business. I'm going to keep with you. I'm going to go to Joe in a second, but I just want to ask you one more thing. It's not just the NFL. I mean, it's obviously the big ticket, but there are other use cases year round. It's really kind of a 365-day calendar that these venues are on at this point, right? I mean, there's other sports that draw people to these venues. There's NBA, there's Major League Baseball, there's the World Cup. Maybe we could talk about that more in fun.
Yeah, we focus on that. We're 32 years yesterday. It was our birthday. DirecTV 32 years old. And we've been spending all that time. We've invested in the technologies. In satellite, and we're in the 50% edge and investing in those technologies and streaming. So we've got the use cases down. Now it's about content. And as I mentioned earlier, since it's starkly different from the family sitting in their living room to a family sitting in a hotel, on a plane, or in a restaurant, the content started to leak, what we call the leaky bucket, on the single family household side. So now that's only available on Amazon Prime. That's only available on Peacock, et cetera. And so what we do is we focus on content, both for the B2C use case, but also the B2B. So if you look at all the content in sports alone that has leaked over to streaming only, We have most of that in our lineup ingest because we work with those partnerships because we understand who our customer is and we're focused on the customer. Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime is a good example of that. MLS with Apple is another good example that I could go on. You see it in our lineup, and people could come to your establishment and they don't have to worry about whether that jumped to this app or where I paid for it. They could just come and watch it there because we've worked to ingest all those into our satellite and our streaming technologies, and they don't have to worry about it in that use case. You just come every time. So we kind of focus on that, but it's not 100%. I'd say the NFL Sunday Ticket and Peacock are the only exceptions as it sits right now. But there's a lot of other content in sports that have went to streaming that we do have on our ingest. So we all got focus on the customer, right?
So Joe, you've been involved with big ticket events distributed to the business market for a couple of years, as we discussed. What are you hearing from your constituents at this point? You know, they're under a gun, like you said. There's a timeline to get situated for Everpass's new rules. What's the scuttlebutt in the market?
So what we're really hearing from our customers, and we hear this because we like to treat our customers, not only selling them a product, but act on it as advisors. And so they lean on us for advice. And what we hear in the marketplace is that they are not excited at all about the NFL Sunday Ticket being exclusively streaming. They love their DirecTV system. It's been with them for decades. It's reliable. The staff knows how to use it. And the fact that it will only be on streaming is not really how we operate as a company. We ask the customer, hey, what big UFC fight do you want to watch? What big boxing event do you want to watch? And then how do you want to receive it? And at this point, there are 9 out of 10 of our customers are telling us they prefer to receive the signal through their DirecTV satellite system because of, you know, the reliability and because of this, you know, just the legacy of it. And they're not happy. The price is going up. I understand maybe for the product. This is uncertainty about, you know, streaming, the investment that has to be made to do that. So right now, I think there's a little bit of a wait and see by the customers, hoping that, you know, somewhere where you're at the 11th hour, you know, something could change, and that, you know, maybe back when it was 3 years ago, when Everpass won the rights for it, and people were just, you know, calling us all the time saying, gosh, I'm praying every night that DirecTV still has it because that's the way we want to receive the signal. So there is some angst in the marketplace for sure.
So I'm going to stick with you here. I hear this argument, you know, on the consumer side about the supposed pain points of streaming live sports. And as I recall, and I was one of them a decade ago, I forget what the last pay TV provider I had. I cycled to DirecTV at one point. I quit it because of somebody else's promotion. I'm sorry, but you know, it happened. But I haven't, you know, I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren, it's a bipartisan thing at this point, but she was complaining about, you know, the NFL's latest deal with Netflix putting another game on this season. And as I recall, she also was complaining about Comcast when they took by Time Warner a decade ago about the PTV, so to speak, too expensive. And we all cut the cord. We got the a la carte world we wanted. So let's live with it. But it's a little different for bars and restaurants. Again, you can't just walk down to Walmart, buy a food stick, and say, here you go. Joe, maybe we could talk a little bit about the technology. What happens, you know, what are your constituents facing?
Well, you know, when they take a look at just their overall business right now, gas prices are up, food prices are up, just as us as consumers. Same thing is happening in the restaurant business. Restaurant business in some of the stores that we're talking to, some of their prices for meat and beverages have gone up 25%. They are, you know, faced with a lot of pressure economically in their business to try to figure out, how they are now going to ingest a streaming service in their bar, and it's tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And the question they say is why? We're not asking for it. It isn't what we want right now. We've seen it. It isn't fully cooked yet. So I think streaming will be part of the future. It will become part of the makeup of the business, the B2B business. But like right now, to know that that's the only way that they're going to be able to get the programming, it doesn't work. We talked about the UFC Freedom 250 event this weekend, which I went to. It was unbelievable. It's one of the greatest events that I've ever done, visited in my history. And uh, we're signal agnostic. Somebody wants to buy the event. How do you want to get? You tell us. Satellite, 9 out of 10. Some people want to get it on cable. Some want to get it on streaming. We want to be able to take care of the customer. And that's what I think I see here now, is that the customer, the person, the company that's spending their money, nobody's thinking about them in this scenario. And I just think that, the customer is, feeling the pressure from that. They feel, a little bit taken advantage and maybe ungrateful a little bit that they're kind of getting treated this way right now. So that's what I'm hearing in the marketplace. And that's what, our customers are telling us.
Can I double click on that? Because well, the other part of that, right, Joe, is that sports is a year-round business, isn't it? Yeah. And there's usually 2 days a year that there's not at least a professional sporting event. That's the day before and day after the MLB's Grand Slam. This year, that's not prevalent because of World Cup. So this year, there's not a day in the calendar year we won't have a professional sporting event. That doesn't include college. So the streaming solution, of course, and it doesn't replace everything they have today. So now you have 2 boxes, right? And so there's a multi-switch configuration of that, which adds to the cost. But the bigger thing about the cost and the streaming is what I said earlier. What streaming has to solve for reliability, it's got to solve for the time sync issue, bandwidth requirements, and latency. So it hasn't done that yet. So if I invest $10,000 a location for the video perspective now, as that gets fixed, I'm going to have to spend it again. Arguably, you might have to do that 3 or 4 times in the next 10 years. So it's the 2 things, and sports being year round. And then it's this investment's not going to be it because those 4 categorical issues have not been fixed yet.
As I was listening to you, Joe, I was thinking of jumping motorcycles on the South Lawn. And I was one of those that have misgivings about it, but I couldn't question the video production. It was flawless.
It was outstanding. And I got to tell you, our company's been around long enough that we were a company that distributed the Evel Knievel jump over the water fountains at front of Caesar's Palace, who knows, 40 years ago or something like that, right? And then also his flawed jump up the Grand Canyon. But yes, it was an amazing event. And to be there in person and just to see just all the military that was there and the flyovers, and it really was a tribute to the country and to the celebration of 250 years. That's for sure.
As I watched those old Evel Knievel crash, the archival footage, I didn't think too much of those crashes when I was young and was an Evel Knievel fan. Now that I'm older, man, they look painful. I just don't know how that dude did it.
That's a quick story. Evel Knievel's doing the jump over the Grand Canyon, and we did what they called closed circuit TV back there in big arenas. And so everybody looks too young to remember this, but I'm the oldest guy in the room. He takes off over the Grand Canyon, and I'm with my dad standing there, and he goes up, and he goes like 100 feet, and he is now going to crash in the Grand Canyon. And my dad looks at me and he says, "That son of a bitch better be dead, or we're going to have to refund all the tickets."
That's too bad that he didn't die.
Yeah.
Jim, let me get to you real fast. Talk about about the nuts and bolts, what's involved here. I mean, it's a significant technological transition in these days.
Exactly. I mean, and I just want to tell you from the perspective of the 25,000 sports bars that are here in the United States, and that's just a rough number. There's a lot more restaurants that show sports too, but I'm saying there's probably 25,000, core, sports bar, sports centric type restaurants out there. If you go into most of them, you won't find a network control room or a network engineer standing there, or much less a manager who can figure out how to switch between box A and box B reliably. And, at noon on Sundays, when there's a line out the door, people coming in to watch their football game, the last thing they want to deal with is infrastructure issues. It's a crazy world, but, in the bar and restaurant, we can't afford all of those costs. So I don't care if it's DirecTV. If this new streaming box offered me a drop-in replacement and did everything wonderful, great, let's do it. But instead, what we have here is I've got to grab 8 Everpass streaming boxes. I got to sit them where my DirecTV boxes are at. I got to put AB switches. And this is a location where I already have a video distribution switch, an HDMI matrix switch that sends the signal out to the TVs. But I have half of my locations, they're older. They just have 30 DirecTV boxes, one behind every TV. Okay. Staff knows how to use them. They've got a remote control with numbers, they stick them on the wall. They got their 30 remotes. They can go around and change their channels. So when they want to watch that particular football game on Sunday, they know it's on channel 738 and they just tune it in. They actually get a guide. We pay, because of all this programming, where it comes from, we actually, sports bars pay for a guide service we get a guide every day telling us, here's the actual channel numbers where you're going to find all of this program. And we pay for that. But we need a solution that works, drops in, and doesn't disrupt the flow of bars and restaurants. And no one has money to spend on this big change. So they come along and the customers even look at it, because I was up in Washington last week, and they said, just go out, buy 30 Roku sticks and stick it here behind all the TVs, right? And because that's how it works for home. And I said, the problem is, even if I put 30 of these Everpass boxes behind the TVs in this room and put 4 of them on that game, those 4 TVs aren't going to show the same thing. They're going to all be out of time sync because they didn't think about fixing the time sync problem. So now I'm forced into using a single set of boxes, putting the HDMI video switch in, running Ethernet cable out to all of my TVs, and basically retraining the staff on how to use their switch. Now, it's an improvement. It allows me to do some other things. And in the future world of streaming, maybe that's what we have to do. But it's 20, 30 grand, to wire out the place. And here we have a bar that has a perfectly good system that's been working all these years. We're just looking, and the whole reason I went to Washington is like, why wouldn't the NFL care about their fans and their customers and just leave it on DirecTV for everybody that's got that sunk cost and investment? And you want it on streaming, or it's the new way, we'll buy streaming boxes. But why would you get rid of one platform? It's almost like they don't want bars and restaurants to show football on Sundays.
Yeah, we can speculate on what the motive might be. If we can buy 40 more minutes, we'll do that. I mean, that's a discussion in itself, grounded in a lot of potential, like I said, speculation. But I'm going to keep it with you here, Jim. Before this Everpass news, there was a dispersion fragmentation already happening a couple of years ago. Friday Night Baseball started on Apple, which I quite like. Peacock and Amazon took over NBA games this year. You can watch NASCAR on Amazon now too. I love their burn bar. We can see the fuel. I don't know. That's cool. I mean, it's for the consumer market. It is great, but I mean, how have you guys kept up with this dispersion that's already happened?
Well, each time the fragmentation happened, we were all freaked out. We're like, do we have to get Apple TV boxes? Do we have to get Amazon? How is Amazon commercially licensed? How are we going to show the Thursday night game? And luckily DirecTV stepped up and made a deal to give us the Amazon game on Thursday nights and to give us channels to handle the Apple TV. So again, the managers are just dialing a channel number. It was crisis averted. Now we do have plenty of streaming things. So typically in a location, we'll give one PC computer input to them for the locations that have video distribution, which are the higher end sports bars with 40 or 50 TVs. And there they can get on their computer and pull up whatever's coming on, a special stream, whatever, and they'll drag it over. But it's a very manual process. And, you know, that everybody in the bar might be watching the manager drag a screen over from the multi-screen PC and looking at what else is on their desktop to see what they've been doing. It's not an elegant solution at all. And, you know, coming to this meeting, it's like, hey, all you streamer dudes, get this stuff figured out, right? Because it just needs to work. It just needs to be easy. And when we're in the bar, most of my bars, some of them are old. They have, a couple hundred megabit internet connections, but it runs customer Wi-Fi, POS, security cameras. There's 20 things pulling up that. In my newest locations, that are in suburban areas, sure, I'll get gig fiber installed from the get-go. But, and even then, you still typically just put it through one little network switch. You're not worried about segregating traffic. I don't think about, I need to keep my customer Wi-Fi off of this segment because they're going to download something on Sunday at noon and kill all of my football streams, right? Because of the shared bandwidth aspects. So these are all things the managers that work in the bars and restaurants, they have no idea about, and they don't want to think about it. And I mean, they just want it to work. Even right here in this hotel, they just want it to work. They have DirecTV. I stopped in last night and talked to them, right? They don't have any streaming boxes. They're like, what do you mean it's not going to work in 83 days? And that's a Marriott Corporation.
2-minute warning is coming. This is going to be a thing in August, I can tell. Mike, I'll bring it to you, kind of along the same lines. This fragmentation was already occurring. How has been DirecTV been keeping up with that?
Two categorical ways. One I touched on earlier when I said we have a content team that focuses on the different customer use cases we have. That they split it up. They're doing a content deal and they're saying, okay, here's the consumer rights we need, and here's the B2B rights we need, and that is going to be ingest. So that, to your point about crisis averted when it came to the Apple or the Amazon, that's what they focus on. That's because of that. That's because them thinking about your use case when they're negotiating these content deals. So one of them is from a content perspective. The other one's from a technology perspective. We're investing capital. I mean, overall, we've invested a massive amount of capital in product as a whole, in a consumer, in our B2B use cases. But most of our capital on B2B use cases have been on streaming. And so I'm really excited about where it's at. We launched our streaming product last year. We're launching this at scale. I was at our engineering lab a month ago, and I got to see use cases for what your bar would be and other things on streaming. And I was really excited. We're working on addressing those 4 things that I mentioned earlier, starting with reliability and also the time synchronization and also low bandwidth requirements. Like that's what we're investing into. So get the rights to make sure that defragmentation doesn't affect the current use cases and the patrons they're trying to serve, and then build the technology that can address those 4 pain points. We don't tell customers that we're the future and force them into pain. We solve problems for customers, and then that becomes the future. And that's just our fundamental philosophy.
I'm going to pivot to the economic side a little bit. I'll direct it at Jim, but Mike, Joe, weigh in as you wish. As we discussed, it's not a terribly elastic time in the consumer market to pass cost on to. Maybe we could scope out some of the economics and the volume of rooms and venues that need to be addressed. What are some of the raw numbers involved here?
Yeah, and a typical sports bar with let's say, an occupancy of 200, where we're already paying $14,000 a year for the programming, and we're not up here complaining about that cost. I mean, we gripe about it, but I mean, at this point, charge me $15,000 and just leave it alone. It's like, don't make me jump through all these hoops. But absolutely, for a ton of bars and restaurants out there, they're just like, we're not going to show football on Sunday anymore. We'll just show the broadcast games. That's it. We're giving up because they don't have 10, 20 grand to put in video distribution to make it work right. So you're going to see this fall, if streaming is the only solution, a lot of bars and restaurants that are just showing, what you get at home for free over your TV. And as Joe said, you're talking to your customers, they're like, wait and see, and they're not happy. Well, they're not happy because I'm in a sports bar business where, it's a good day if we make 10 cents on the dollar, and some years we're making 5 cents on the dollar. And I mean, people are like, why did I pay $4 for that beer? Well, they don't want to hear, well, now you're going to pay $5 for the beer because I had to buy a video switch and I had to buy a bunch of stuff. And, we try hard, all of America's independent bars and restaurants, and even all the chains, we don't want to raise our prices. We try, I succeed in business because I keep my prices as low as possible. Okay. And that only happens when we all work together to make sure that we're not overpaying for everything else. And that's it in a nutshell, really.
Well, I love that you say that and talk about the financial board, because like my message for today, for you and for this whole panel and everybody, is there is still time. You mentioned 83 days to kick off. There is still time. We've distributed NFL Sunday ticket to bars and restaurants for 32 years. We have all the pipes there. It's IT billing. We reserve the satellite capacity. We're holding that there. We'll do a reasonable deal. We'll do a deal like we did the last 3 years. This isn't about economics. It's about a business decision that somebody's made, but it doesn't have to be. There is still time. And I think that's what we got to keep on. And because the businesses that invest in these streaming solutions, there's some great things that I've seen from Upshow that they could do for businesses. We're talking about live sports in bars and restaurants is what we're talking about. And if we don't, if you kind of force it now, is the money that you invest in the streaming box that's available right now, is that going to be good 2 years from now? Probably not. So why skip this first train of investment? Why force this kind of thing when there's still time? Because most of the people, like you said, the Marriott Corporation and the bar that's downstairs, most bars and restaurants aren't as proactive as Jim here. He's going to Congress to testify about this problem. Most of them won't know about this problem until the season starts, and we can fix this before the season starts. So that's my play, is that there's still time, and let's fix it.
I just want to say that DirecTV didn't send me a letter saying, hey, we lost the programming. How many bars and restaurants are out there if we don't start screaming and jumping up and down, just think it's going to come on in September? Because that's how it works. DirecTV, once you sign up, it just works every fall. And is it true, Mike, that I've heard some of the large casinos may consider just dropping Sunday ticket because of the whole buffering problem? They don't want to go buffering because they can't show games delayed. It impacts betting.
I think well, first, just on price value, I think they are looking at NFL Sunday ticket differently because of this. And we have tried to communicate to customers just to let them know that we remain ready to get a deal done here. But they're looking at the price value because of the cost to switch. And that's making them look at the cost of the package itself and those things. But that one thing is driving the other. And there are some that have signaled they may drop it if we don't work this out. And yes, we have heard that from use cases as large as a casino and as small as a 200 fire code occupancy.
Just so you know, I have 8 bars and restaurants. 2 of them are little bitty neighborhood bars. We only show the broadcast stuff. I've never been able to economically justify putting the Sunday ticket into those bars. If I'm going to have 30, 40 people sitting around the room, but the occupancy of the bar is 150, but there's 30 people here. Now, even if I bought the Sunday ticket, okay, maybe I'd have 40 people, but it's just a little neighborhood bar, and they already have priced out the little bars, but now they're starting to price out the operations just because of the infrastructure issues.
We're in the last 8 seconds, and I have to do a little Caleb Williams action here and try to get this ball in the end zone before time expires. One question, it's binary, yes or no. Will this get worked out, or will there be disaster, no games on at your local bar or restaurant in the fall. This works out, yes. This doesn't work out, disaster, no. Mike, what say you?
My bet is yes, because we're not going to stop. It's not just up to us, but we're not going to stop until we work this out. We have customers to protect, and that's how we got successful in this business. So my bet is yes.
Got it. How about you, Tim?
I say if it's the streaming only solution, I'm willing to bet on half of the bars and restaurants not having Sunday ticket this year.
Split the limelight, like it. Joe?
I have belief in DirecTV. I think it's going to get worked out. And I think the customers, just like Jim said, there's so many that don't even realize right now that this is happening. Once they do, there won't be a loud enough voice collectively as a group that I think they'll put, a lot of pressure on the decision makers in all of this. And I feel like at the end, DirecTV is going to, come back into the fold.
That's great. It's all to you, Mike. Counting on you.
Well, thanks for raising it, Dan, and coming here and doing this.
So thanks to the three of you coming on and being a great panel. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thanks for Questex for having us, and we'll turn it over to the next one.